Hello, my name's Ben.
And my name's Josh.
Welcome back to FPL Graduates. Welcome back to another video. Where in this video we're going to be going through our Game Week 35 team reveals. We're going to be talking through some of our decisions that we've got to come up. So without further ado, let's get straight into Josh's team.
So yeah, getting into my team then. We're recording this on Wednesday night, so we haven't quite completed the game week just yet. Nottingham Forest and Brentford to play each other on Thursday night. I'm all out 103 on the free hit, which is an unbelievable score, to be honest. It's half my ranked at the time of recording. There are a lot of players though that can harm that rank on Thursday. So yeah, by all means, it's not locked in at 66k at the moment. But yeah, obviously hoping for Mbumo, Chris Wood, those kind of guys to keep quiet. I don't think it will happen, but yeah, good start overall for that free hit chip. Into this week then, obviously we've got the one free transfer after using that chip, and obviously just off the back of a fairly big hit for that bench boost. It was a -8, but it profited me, I think, about 24 points in total after the hit. So it was definitely worth it. But it sorted out the team, looking decent for the weeks ahead. Starting with Emi Martinez in goal. Fulham at home this week. Thought Fulham were pretty drab against Southampton, to be honest. Not creating too many clear-cut chances. So clean sheet potential is definitely there. I don't think there's too many clean sheets on offer this week, if I'm being totally honest. But yeah, I'd be fairly confident in that one, although Fulham are a decent side. Kiwior's up next. It'll be interesting to see what sort of side Arsenal put out. As you can see, I've got Saka and Timber on the bench. I do not expect either of those to be involved at all. Well, maybe off the bench, but nothing crazy. Kiwior seems to play no matter what, so he'll be in there for that sort of coverage of a maybe Arsenal clean sheet that they might get against Bournemouth, despite Bournemouth being fairly decent going forwards. Gvardiol's up next, Wolves at home. Really happy to own him. I think clean sheet potential is good, despite how well Wolves have been playing. I think they have been playing some, pretty poor opposition, Leicester, Man United. So I think, when they turn up against a team that's playing quite well themselves in Manchester City, I think it'll be a different ball game. And then Daniel Munoz rounds off the defence. He's got Forest at home this week. Not the best fixture in the world. Not the worst either, though. He does obviously carry high attacking threat. And Forest themselves don't really score a bucket load of goals either. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. I'm sort of gambling on that game this week, and hopefully Forest winning it, just due to obviously having the triple up from that Game Week 33 and Game Week 34 hangover. What's the thoughts on that defence, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, a fairly solid defence. Who would have thought Josh would be back in an Aston Villa clean sheet at this point in the season after giving them so much stick throughout the year? So good to see that. But I do agree with your point on Fulham. Don't look too great at the moment and look a bit toothless in terms of attacking threat. So I can see why you have started him. In terms of defence, I do agree. I think Kiwior starts. I'm not sure about Timber or Saka's involvement and how long that's going to be. We didn't see many subs midweek either from Arteta. So we're just going to have to bear that in mind with our teams. Gvardiol is a good pick. I think that's a decent one. Like in terms of attacking returns, not too sure on it because his position's been changing slightly throughout the season. And Munoz, like you said, you probably need something from Palace this week for a green arrow. It's not the worst fixture, like you said. I think you're probably relying more on attacking returns rather than anything else there. But yeah, all in all, a fairly solid defence.
Yes, and then into the midfield we go. So we've currently got Morgan Rogers starting with Fulham at home this week. Like I mentioned, Fulham not been the best at the moment, not in the best of form anyway. But he could be benched depending on my free transfer. So the current plan as it stands is to move Bukayo Saka out and get Bruyne and Mbumo in. And obviously I need to facilitate starting Mbumo because he's got a good fixture against United this week. So yeah, for me, I think it will be Rodgers, although I am tempted by potentially benching Eze or Mateta and sort of having less eggs in that Crystal Palace basket. So haven't really made a full decision on that. I'm almost certain that I will bring in Mbumo for Saka. It's just who do I start him over? So yeah, it's between Rodgers, Eze and probably Mateta. To be honest, I wouldn't bench Eze at the moment just because he's playing really, really well. So it's probably between Mateta and Rodgers that I'd make that decision on. So yeah, on Eze, like I say, he's been playing pretty decent. Obviously scored a really nice goal in that FA Cup semi-final. Obviously Sarr did well as well. It was a good day for Crystal Palace. So it'll be interesting to see how they sort of react in the Premier League, whether they, keep that form or maybe sort of playing more of a rotated side. It'll be interesting to see what Glasner does. Obviously, the final's not for a couple of weeks yet, so there's no real need, in my opinion, to rotate those guys. Kevin De Bruyne is up next, and as I alluded to in our transfer targets video, he has the armband at the moment. I'm keen to go against Salah, which has cost me pretty much all season long, so it might cost me again this game week. But with them wrapping up the title, I just don't. He did say that he's going to chase after, obviously, the individual goal involvements and stuff like that, which I have no doubt he will do. It's just Chelsea away, Stamford Bridge. Chelsea need to win to keep their top 5 hopes alive. Like, I don't know what's there for Liverpool to win that game. There's no gain out of it. So yeah, for me, I'm going against Salah probably this week, and Kevin De Bruyne is the reason probably that I'll do that. All being that he starts. We got a leak last week that he would start, so I'm hoping that we get a leak that he starts again. And if he does start, I'm almost certain I'll put the armband on him. City with Haaland and Rodri back is a massive bonus as well. Obviously, especially with Haaland, those two linking up has been so fruitful ever since Haaland's come into the Premier League. So yeah, hopefully it might be De Bruyne. I'll come on to more captaincy options as well when we get to the forward line. So what's the thoughts on the midfield and that potential captaincy decision, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, to start off with the midfield, like to bring in Mbeumo, I think is probably a sensible decision, just given the fixtures. Like, it looks really good, and one that a lot of managers will be looking to bring in this week. So yeah, I do think that Rodgers could be the one to make way, but I'd be sort of fairly certain if you did drop him to the bench that he'd get a return. So it's just one of those ones. Yeah, with Eze, I think a decent option. In terms of the midfield, whether you sort of could have him make way for anyone, like his potential transfer out, sort of waiting for you in the next couple of game weeks. I do think that De Bruyne captaincy, like I don't think I'm the biggest fan of it. I'm more on sort of Salah's sort of book there with the captaincy. I do agree with the sentiment and the point of being Liverpool have already won the league, but I just don't see where sort of like Arne Slot would let up in terms of driving forwards towards next season. I think they are going to sort of try and continue to keep those performance levels up as much as they can. I think if it was under Jurgen Klopp, they'd probably sort of take the foot off the gas a bit, but I don't see that with an Arne Slot team. So we'll just have to wait and see on that. But yeah, De Bruyne being the early kick-off, it's a big risk and one that could very well pay off and has the highest ceiling in terms of captaincy, but we'll just have to wait and see on that.
Yeah, for sure. And then onto the forward line then. So I did mention Mateta, so he could be also making way for Mbeumo. Mbeumo himself could be a captaincy option this week. He's one that I've thought about. I don't know if I'd be that keen, being United fan, to captain him against my own team. It'd be pretty rogue, but I need to take the bias away, I guess. Visser, though, does currently have the vice captaincy, who is... he brought him in last week with that hit. It was almost forced. I was like, I can only afford Visser, and I got lucky, to be honest. Came away with that 11-pointer. We'll happily take that on the bench boost. It made it a success on its own. So yeah, really happy to own him, and obviously having that double up, I think, will be almost essential going forwards now for these last 4 game weeks. A lot of people will own Mbeumo, and I expect his ownership this week to be really close to 100%. So having Visser as well, when that usually it's either, if Mbeumo scores, it's usually assisted by Visser and vice versa. So yeah, more than happy to have him involved. And then there is obviously Omar Marmoush as well, which is an interesting one because obviously I've mentioned that Haaland's going to be back. We did see Marmoush play with Haaland, but then there weren't no De Bruyne. So it's going to be interesting. I don't think it will be a problem for the Wolves game because I don't think Haaland will come in and start straight away. But I do think this will become a problem for me probably next game week against Southampton in particular, which is frustrating because obviously you want players playing against Southampton. So yeah, not all sort of singing and dancing with these City assets now that Rodri and Haaland's back. Is something to consider with the minutes now as well. Obviously Club World Cup as well, they will be focusing on in the sort of the post-season, which you'd imagine De Bruyne wouldn't take part in due to him leaving. So I'm hoping that basically De Bruyne gets a lot of minutes between now and the end of the season is what I'm trying to say. Somehow the forward talks come back to De Bruyne. But yeah, Ben, what's the thoughts on that forward line?
Yeah, I mean, the forward line is solid. Like, it didn't doesn't necessarily need a transfer out either. Like Mateta could be still like a decent option. He looks to still be in decent form, albeit sort of like not the best FA Cup semi-final performance from him. But yeah, I think like Vita is going to be a really strong option going into these last few games of the season. I do think there are a few decent options at that forward line that you can sort of look at. And Marmoush, I think, is, it's not an issue for the next 2 weeks. I just don't think City will, if they can secure that top five, then they won't risk Haaland too much. And I think a win against Wolves and Man City will probably try not to play Haaland too much before the end of the season. I don't imagine Pep sort of seems like the manager who wants to rush anyone too quickly back in. So I'm less concerned about Marmoush, but of course, like you said, like there's always that element of risk involved in it. Okay, so moving on into my team, we're currently ranked 60k with Chris Wood left to play on Thursday night. So, well, hopefully we'll see sort of maybe to stay around the same rank. Not sure sort of what will happen there. But to move into my defence, we've got Raya in goal, Bournemouth at home. I don't expect him to be rotated out for that game. Konza in there for the Aston Villa defence. I'm just sort of looking at it, and I sort of preferred having Konza against, like we said, a toothless Fulham than Munoz with Nottingham Forest at home. So that's one that I do prefer. We got Gvardiol in there as well, same as Josh. Like he's been fairly solid for me this season, and then Jurriën Timber in there to round off the defence. So yeah, I'm not sure about Timber's minutes at the moment, which I do think he could end up getting benched. So there's a thought process there to maybe start Munoz and bench Timber. So we'll just have to sort of see how I feel more towards the deadline. That's likely what I'll do because, of course, we saw minutes off the bench for Ben White. I think Ben White's more likely to start than Timber. So we'll just have to wait and see on that. Josh, what's your thoughts on the defence?
Yeah, totally agree with the minutes issue with Timber. I just can't see it. Like the PSG game's so big for them, so I don't see them playing Timber. You also had like a little bit of a knock in that game as well against PSG, so yeah, I just don't see why they'd risk him. Munoz as well is not a bad option, I don't think, this week, like we discussed. Decent attacking threat. And clean sheet wise, Crystal Palace have actually kept clean sheets against quite a few teams this season, so it wouldn't shock me for that Palace Forest game to be a low scorer either. Obviously, so we discussed about the Villa clean sheet. I don't think it's necessarily likely, but in a game week where I don't think there'll be too many, I think that's probably one of our better bets.
Okay, so moving on into the midfield, and we have got Salah on the captaincy at the moment for Chelsea away. I do agree, sort of like the fixtures are a little bit tough, but Chelsea haven't been that great all season, so I don't see too much hopefully changing with that, and hopefully sort of Liverpool turn up and sort of do the job, and we saw photos of Salah back in training literally like 2 days after or a day after they secured the title, back in the gym first thing Monday morning after sort of winning the league. So we know he's going to want to sort of get those records, and for me that makes him a very strong captaincy choice. Like Josh said, there's a temptation for a lot of managers to go away from the grain of the Salah captaincy. It's understandable from a perspective where Salah hasn't been performing too well over the last sort of 5-6 game weeks. But for me, I'm not sort of swaying from that at the moment, just because in my team I don't see like a decent alternative at the moment. We've got Morgan Rogers in there as well, Fulham at home. Like as much as I like sort of potentially attacking this Fulham fixture, I haven't gone all out and put Tielemans in as well. He's on my bench. We've also got Ismail Assar, who performs really well in the FA Cup semi-final. Really sort of strong performance from him. So hoping he can carry that on into the league. And then Bukayo Saka as well in there. So that's my second Arsenal player that I really don't think is going to start this game week. So there's a consideration and temptation, especially with a couple of tough Arsenal fixtures coming up, with that PSG game as well. Like there could be sort of an element of rotation in there. If Arsenal end up getting through against PSG, everyone's going to be wrapped up in cotton wool for the final. So there's a temptation to go to the obvious choice in Burmo, but I'm in a position where I can wait until sort of a little closer to the deadline before making that decision. So that's sort of my thought process at the moment. The potential of a Bukayo Saka transfer for Burmo. Josh, what's the thoughts?
Yeah, obviously, I think a lot of managers will be trying to get in Burmo, obviously myself and yourself included this week. So, yeah, I think he's a good option. Obviously, gives you another potential captaincy option for the next couple of weeks as well with the United and Ipswich games. So, yeah, I think it's the right move. Being able to play Rodgers this week is a nice thing. Obviously, I could start him as well, but it's going to be a benching headache no matter what. I think Tielemans obviously doesn't offer that much attacking threat compared to Morgan Rodgers, so it's a bit of a no-brainer in that regard. Hopefully, Salah can get you some FPL points instead of FA Cup points. That will be nice this week. And yeah, Salah captaincy obviously is definitely not a bad decision. He's 100% probably one of the better captaincy picks this week. It's just whether you wanted to go against it or if you want to obviously go with him again. And if anything, it's going to make his EO lower because a lot of people will think that the league's racked up. What have they got to play for? So yeah, it's a double-edged sword.
Okay, so moving on into the striker positions, and we've got Alexander Isak with what I think is a really good fixture against Brighton away, and definitely, consideration for captaincy. I do think that matchup really favours Newcastle, and the play styles really sort of suits the way Newcastle play. So really sort of tempted to sort of look at a potential captaincy if, of course, I wasn't already set on Salah. Mateta in there as well, and Marmoush, so fairly similar sort of front three to Josh. And then on the bench, we've got Kepa, Munoz, who I'm very tempted to switch with Timber, Tielemans and Williams for his decent fixtures that they do have coming up. So that's the team, that's the overall thoughts, potential of maybe one free transfer. In an ideal world, before we got to the Champions League game, I was hoping that I'd be able to sort of roll my free transfer going into next week, but it's looking like that may not be possible. So we'll just have to see on that. Josh, what's the overall thoughts on the team?
Yeah, I agree with the Isak shout. The Brighton away fixture is not a bad one at all. It's the sort of the last four fixtures for Newcastle aren't the best, but they again fighting for top five, so they've got the reason to go out there and perform. And obviously Isak's been fantastic all season long, so yeah, not a bad shout at all. Obviously he's going to be a massive threat to my rank this week. Marmoush and Mateta, obviously we discussed about them already. I think overall it's solid. I think the transfer is definitely needed. I wouldn't really, to be honest, I can see Saka and Timber getting like a 1-pointer like we saw against Everton a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, for me, I would definitely make the move on at least one of them, and then obviously you can have Munoz starting over Timber. Okay then, so that wraps up game weeks 35 team reveals, I do believe. So yeah, make sure you hit that like button if you did enjoy it. Let us know what sort of dilemmas you've got in your teams heading into this deadline. There's going to be lots to talk about, rotation, team news, stuff like that. So yeah, we'll try and get back to as many of you as possible. If you do want your team reviewing though, the Patreon is in the link in the bio. We review people's teams on there all the time. It's a pretty wicked community over there.
Yeah, absolutely. And as always, please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the FPL Graduates. I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
We'll see you guys
later. Have a good game week, everyone.
So you